Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today's episode, I want to give a shout out to someone I've never met personally, but I've spoken with this gentleman on the phone many times. He lives out in Bakersfield, California. His name is George Estioko, and I met George. Actually, I shouldn't say I met him because I never have met him, but I spoke to George for the first time. I believe it was March 13th. He called and reached out to me. We were traveling and speaking just before the pandemic hit, March 13th, 2019. I believe that was the date. And we were in Boston. Rhea and I were up in Boston to speak at a paving company. And the phone rang, and I had the privilege of starting my relationship with George. But anyway, I want to share a message that he sent me a while back. It hadn't been too long ago. But I got a text from him, and I'm going to read it to you here. He says, real simple, but it's powerful. If you bought it, we built it. He says that's a message from the blue collar workforce. I like that. If you bought it, we built it. You know, and I think about that, especially in times of the pandemic that we've been going through and hopefully almost finished going through. Hopefully that's about to pass. But I think about all the times I heard people on the news all over everywhere, people talking about shutdown. We're in a shutdown. I'm telling you, we ain't been in a shutdown. We've been in a slowdown. As long as the blue collar folks go to work, we ain't shut down. We might be slowing down, but we haven't been shut down. Things gonna get ugly in a hurry if the blue collar people decide to stay home. There won't be any power. There won't be any water. There won't be any fuel. Pretty much, there won't be anything except chaos. But fortunate for us, and many thanks to all of you that are listening. I'm sure most of you that listen to me are in the blue collar industry someplace, and most of you kept right on trucking. So I want to extend my gratitude to you for showing up and making it happen. You know, one thing, the outstanding, hardworking people stayed the course throughout the pandemic with little, if any, protection for many months. So I always say, be on the lookout for a blue-collar worker. And when you see one, thank one. When you see one, thank one. They made things happen for those of us who were depending on them. They showed up day after day, week after week, month after month. Without a doubt, they are the backbone of our nation. For all of those who use the word shutdown in reference to what happened in the USA, I want you to know this truth. I'm going to say it one more time. We were never in a shutdown, only a slowdown. The blue collar folks, they stayed the course. The majority of them didn't stay home. They didn't have an option to stay home. They made it happen. So I appreciate each and every one of them. You should too. Remember, when you see one, thank one. And one more time, George's message to me was pretty cool. If you bought it, we built it. A message from the blue collar workforce. And I just thought that was pretty good. Wanted to share it with you guys right off the bat today. Get a little gratitude going at the beginning of this episode. Let's talk a little bit about leadership. So I want to share a quote with you from Mitch Bowling, and it's pretty powerful. It's real simple, but it's powerful. He says, when a leader gets out from behind his desk and walks around, great things can happen. Doesn't mean they will happen. It depends on the leader. Some leaders, we wish they would never get out from behind their desk, just stay there forever. But that's not the one. That's not the leader that Mitch is talking about. Mitch is talking about high impact leaders. He's talking about leaders who will get out from behind their desk, go out and engage the people, go out and look for the root cause of what's going on, get out and learn what the problems are, and then address those problems. Remove obstacles for the team, help the team solve their problems. It's pretty powerful. But that quote assumes the leader values building relationships, removing obstacles, asking great questions, and truly wants to help make things better. Those are the kind of leaders that we want to get out from behind their desk. Come out and join us, help make our world, meaning our workspace, our work life, our professional life, if we're in the blue collar space, make it better. I remember there were so many leaders. I used to say all the time when I worked in the manufacturing plants, I always used to say it, if I ever in my life get to a position where I could actually build a manufacturing plant, I was going to build it in a circle. It wasn't going to be a square building or rectangular shaped building. Wasn't going to have front offices, not the plant that I would have built. It was going to be in a circle. And the offices were going to be in the middle of the plant so that anybody who worked there had to walk through the plant to get to their office. I remember working in one plant and I was leading a Kaizen team, a process improvement team. And one of the participants, she was excited to be on the team, but she'd been working there like 12 years and had never been in the manufacturing plant. She'd never been out there. She worked in the front office. She pulled up, parked her car, got out, went in the front office, did her job, walked out, got in her car, went home. There are a lot of front office people who support blue collar industries who don't even know what the people do. They don't know how hot it is. They don't know how dirty it is. They don't know about the environment that a lot of the people are working in. They've never even seen the process. So when they're talking to customers or suppliers or those kind of folks, or maybe in a meeting with the people who actually work out there, they can't even relate because they've never been out there. So I just want to mention to you, if you're listening and you support the blue collar workforce, get out from behind your desk. Go out and meet the people. See what they do. Watch them work. If you really want to have some fun, help them for a little while. Tell them you want them to show you how to do what they do. Some things too dangerous, you can't help them. Some things, though, all you got to do is be willing, and you can help them out a little bit. You build some great relationships and get to know the folks. So just think about that. In the lean world, it's called going to the Gemba. The Gemba is a Japanese word for actual place where the work actually happens. So that's what that's about. So moving on, I want to share with you a quote. I'm reading a quote book called the Treasury of Quotes by Jim Rohn, America's foremost business philosopher. That's what's on the front cover. So it's full of quotes from Jim Rohn. He's had a lot of good ones, and I've put some quotes from him in my books. I share them on social media. And again, if you don't follow me on LinkedIn, you need to get set up on LinkedIn. If you're not established, it's an online resume placeholder, but it's far more than that. If you want to truly grow and engage other people who are trying to help you build relationships, network, all that sort of stuff, make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. And but I share a lot of quotes from different people. Jim Rohn is one of them that I remember sharing quite a few from him on my LinkedIn profile. But here's one I got from reading the book I was just mentioning lately. This is what he says, and you'll understand why it means a lot to me when I read it. But he says, it isn't what the book costs, it's what it will cost if you don't read it. If you're into reading, you're much more likely to be succeeding. That's my words. If you're into reading, you're much more likely to be succeeding. But his words, his quote, it isn't what the book costs, it's what it would cost if you don't read it. I can't imagine the bookshelves back behind me full of books, especially the bottom row. It's where I keep the books that really changed me the most. I can't imagine if I had never read those books, but I can imagine this. The cost on my life would have been tremendous. Who knows? I could, if I would never fix my anger problem, I could have done something stupid by now. I could have been in jail or in prison or dead because I got into something stupid. I could have done something stupid, drinking alcohol. I wouldn't have been able to do all the things that I've done and help all the people that I've helped since I wrote my own books. All that started because I chose to read books. I'm sure you guys get tired of hearing me talk about reading books, but I'm telling you, you got to educate yourself somehow. College is one place to get an education, but it ain't the only place. And really all it's going to do is prepare you. I can tell you one thing that'll happen if you go to college. You're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff that you have zero interest in. I know, I've been there. I had to learn it. I had to pass the test. My wife, Rhea, same way. A lot of stuff they teach you in college, you don't want to know, you don't need to know. But for whatever reason, they think you need to know it. But when you go read, if you see all these books behind me and all the ones in my phone you've never seen, those books are books I'm interested in. I've read enough books. I don't have a degree that says I have a PhD, but I got a PhD in results from reading these books, transforming my life, transforming organizations. That's the only PhD that matters to me, is a PhD in results. But what allowed me to get that is all my time and effort spent intentionally reading. So one more time, it isn't what the books cost, it's what it will cost if you don't read it. It isn't what the book costs, it's what it will cost if you don't read it. There's hundreds of thousands of books out there waiting for you to read them. If you haven't read any of my books, make sure you go to bluecollarleadership.com, type in / and the word download, and you can read excerpts from pretty much all of my books. There's also a link. You can go read excerpts from some of Rhea's books. In my Blue Collar Leadership series books, I have 5 in that series. You can read the first 5 chapters of every one of those books. You can read there's 30 chapters, 3-page chapters. So you read the first 5 chapters. You can also read the other 25 chapters. You can see the opening chapter title, subtitle, opening quote, closing quote for the remaining 25 chapters. So you can see the entire outline of the book. You don't have to put in an email. You don't have to subscribe to anything. I'm not going to spam you. I don't like spamming people. I don't like people spamming me, so I don't spam people. You can read it directly on the site, or you can download a PDF, read it right there, save it in your computer, share it with any of your coworkers who might have an interest. All right, let's get back to talking about leadership a little bit more. So people follow high impact leaders because they want to, and low impact leaders because they have to. My challenge to you is be a leader worth following. And remember, leadership is influence. So when I say be a leader worth following, I'm not saying you have to be a boss. You don't have to boss anybody. And if you're a boss, you ought not to be bossing anybody. You ought to be leading everybody. But be a leader worth following. Be a person worth following. If you're a boss, again, don't get tangled up thinking because people are following you, you're a great boss. Some people have to follow you. And if you haven't grown and developed those people on your team, it's a really good chance they have to follow you. But if you're growing and developing your people, your team, they've probably got options. And one of them is not to follow you. So if you're growing and developing your team and people are following you, most likely, odds are, it's because they want to. I'm going to share a quote with you now from a friend and mentor of mine. You've heard me talk about him a lot. I think a lot of Mr. Jimmy Collins. He was the former president and chief operating officer at Chick-fil-A, basically for almost 33 years. And he retired when they reached $1 billion in sales. He was Truett Cathy, 3rd staff employee, I believe, back in 1967 or 68. But he was Truett Cathy's right-hand man as those two together built the Chick-fil-A empire. So one of the things Jimmy says while we're talking about leadership, And it's so good. Jimmy says things so simply. I like simple. He says, there are plenty of good people. However, there is a shortage of good bosses. There are plenty of good people. However, there is a shortage of good bosses. Jimmy knew and still knows what I know. There's plenty of good people. Plenty of good people out there. Now, the bad leaders or the poor leaders, weak leaders, poor managers, weak managers, those folks, they can't find any good people. And when they do, they won't stay. There's a lot of truth to that. But good bosses don't have a problem finding good people because they already have good people on their team who will tell other good people who don't work there how good it is to work there. Good bosses create good cultures that attract and retain good people. You know, one of the things we hear all across the country, you've heard me say it before, we just can't find any good people. It's one of the many excuses bad bosses use. You don't hear, I've never heard a high impact leader, a great leader, a leader worth following. I've never, ever heard one of those leaders, and I meet them all over the country, but I've never heard one of those leaders say, I just can't find any good people. They don't say that. They don't have to say that. They attract and retain great people. I've never heard a really good boss say that. Only bad bosses. So if you're a boss with enough humility to look in the mirror and say, I'm responsible for the culture, then you need to make sure you check out my cultural transformation resource. I got a series on it. It starts at 179, episode 179, but it's my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high performance teams. That'll help you and your company become a sought after employer of choice. Those companies, sought after employers of choice, they don't have to look for good people. I'll give you an example. My friend Jason Denham, who's the vice president of electrical construction at Kilgore in Dallas, Fort Worth area. You heard me talk about him before. There's 4 episodes that I've recorded with him. I was speaking to him since the last podcast I did. I was speaking to him, and we were talking about this very subject. And he told me, as he's growing and building up, expanding the electrical division at Kilgore, he's telling me how many great and good people that he can't hire. He told me the other day, he said, I ain't struggling to find good people. He said, my challenge is not being able to hire all the good ones that want to work here. That's what high impact leadership will get you. It'll get the people on your team. He was telling me, he said, Mac, I bring in some good, really, really good people. He said, I hire them all myself. I interview them myself. I bring them in, add them to my team. He said, so I know who they are to start with. I tell them who we are, what I'm about. And then they come in, they see us for real. And they see that that's what we're trying to build is a high degree of character and focus on cultural development through the entire organization. He said, what happens then are the new people who are really good people. When they come in and they see us for real and they get to feel it, he said the first thing they start doing is calling people who work at the companies they used to work at, starting telling them, hey, you need to come work over here with us. So the line gets longer and longer and longer. But that's a good problem. But it's a problem that he has, the problem of not being able to hire such quality talent who want to leave another company and come work with him and his team. You want to learn how you do that? It's in that book, my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, 5 components for building high performance teams. You're going to have to do a lot more than what's in that book, but that book will explain it to you. If you want to listen to a 30-part series on it, go back to episode 179 and get started. There's 30 episodes there where I kind of walk you through that book and that content. So your character as a leader provides boundaries, standards, values, and principles that keep your integrity intact. Those are the words of Dan Reiland. Your character as a leader provides boundaries, standards, values, and principles that keep your integrity intact. Those who don't learn about character typically think character means you're good or bad. It does mean you're good or bad, but it also means much more. Our character is everything that we are. Our character determines why we do what we do. Our character determines what we will or won't do. Our character determines how we do what we do. And our character determines who will or won't follow us, because who we are is who we attract. And when it comes to leadership development, when it comes to leadership development equals character development. Personal growth is the foundation for leadership development. And leaders worth following always have a high degree of character. So I'm going to leave you with those thoughts today, but I'm telling you, if you're a formal authority leader and you're having to struggle to find good people, or when you get them, you can't keep them, I'm telling you, leadership truth right here to wrap up this podcast. You better look in the mirror, because you're the reason you can't find any good people. You're the reason you can't attract and then retain top talent. It's you. You're the leader. Who you are is who you attract. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen, or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership Series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.